The husky knocked the toddler down again. For the third time that week, his father had finally had enough. James Beaumont was not a man who made impulsive decisions. He was 41, an electrical engineer, methodical by training and by temperament. When he said he had had enough, he meant he had processed the available information and reached a conclusion. The available information was that his 2-year-old Siberian Husky, Kodiak, had knocked his 16-month-old son Theo to the floor 3 times in 4 days, always during a crying episode, and that each knockdown had been preceded by a behavior James had begun to read as escalating aggression. A low, rapid body press, weight against the child's torso, too fast and too hard for the age of the boy it was landing on. Theo had not been hurt, but Theo was 16 months old, and 72 pounds of excited husky was not an acceptable risk margin by any calculation James ran. His wife Simone disagreed, not with the concern, with the conclusion. She had spent 6 years as a social worker, which had given her an acute sensitivity to the difference between patterns that had an explanation and patterns that were what they appeared to be. "This feels like something," she kept saying. James said, "It feels like a large dog knocking over a small child." They were both right about the feeling. They were both wrong about what it meant. Kodiak had been with them from age 10 weeks. He had grown into the kind of husky whose ice blue eyes made strangers stop on sidewalks. Thick silver and black coat. A personality that moved between high-energy chaos and theatrical floor sprawl with no detectable middle state. He had been, until the start of these incidents, predictably safe around Theo. He played gently. He slept in the boy's room without invitation. He gave back toys that were taken from him with the patience of a very tired uncle. The body press behavior had started on a Monday. Theo had been on the kitchen floor, fussing, the escalating kind. Kodiak came from the hallway at pace, lowered his body, and drove his shoulder into Theo's chest. Theo went over sideways. Kodiak stood over him, nose pressed to the boy's face, inhaling in rapid bursts, then pulled back and sat. Theo cried harder. Kodiak did not leave. He pressed against the boy's side, the full length of his body, and lay there with his weight against Theo's torso. James separated them and spent 20 minutes on the phone with a dog trainer who said, "Redirected excitement during infant distress is a documented behavior pattern." He prescribed a management protocol. James began it. On Wednesday, it happened again. On Friday, a third time. Saturday morning, James told Simone he was calling the rescue organization they had adopted Kodiak from to discuss behavioral rehoming assessment. Simone said, "Give me 3 more days." She spent those 3 days watching. Not the knockdowns, the behavior before the knockdowns, the 7 to 12 minutes between Theo beginning to cry and Kodiak making his move. She filmed it. She watched the footage 7 times. Kodiak was not responding to the crying. He was responding to something before the crying got loud. Some earlier signal, a behavioral or chemical shift in Theo, something that preceded the auditory escalation by several minutes, and that Kodiak was tracking with the specific alert posture she recognized from the footage their trainer had shared, the weight shift to the front feet, the slight lowering of the head, the moment of stillness before the approach. She called their pediatrician on a Tuesday. She described everything. She said, "I think the dog is reacting to something neurological." She felt absurd saying it. She said it anyway. Dr. Anita Sharma, their pediatrician of 4 years, listened to all of it. She said, "I want to do an EEG." The electroencephalogram was performed on a Thursday morning at Children's Neurology Associates. Dr. Marcus Webb, pediatric neurologist, reviewed the results and called them that afternoon. Theo's EEG shows abnormal electrical activity consistent with a seizure disorder, he said. The activity is subclinical, meaning it hasn't produced a full visible seizure yet, but the threshold is low. He will need anticonvulsant management. He said, "The crying episodes you've observed are likely absence-equivalent events, brief seizure activity that doesn't produce the classic presentation, but produces a chemical and behavioral signature in the child that is detectable by a sensitive observer." He paused. "Or, in documented cases, by a dog. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one." James sat at the kitchen table after that call and said nothing for a long time. Then he said, "The knockdowns, the body press." He wasn't doing it when Theo was upset. He was doing it before. Dr. Webb had explained it. The body press is a documented seizure response behavior in naturally alert dogs. Pressure against the body of a seizure-prone person can interrupt or reduce the severity of a neurological event. Kodiak had not been taught this. He had arrived at it the way some animals arrive at things, through proximity, through attention, through whatever internal calculus an animal runs when it decides something in its household needs managing. He had been managing it for 4 days. The knockdowns were not aggression. They were intervention. Every time Kodiak drove his shoulder into Theo's chest, he was putting weight on a boy whose brain chemistry was signaling an oncoming event and applying pressure in the way that research in seizure response dogs shows can reduce the severity of the episode. Has your dog ever behaved in a way that looked dangerous but turned out to be something completely different? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Theo is 3 now. He is managed on a low-dose anticonvulsant. His seizure activity has decreased significantly. He wears a small medical alert bracelet. His teachers have been briefed. Kodiak sleeps at the foot of Theo's bed. He has not body-pressed the boy since the medication began managing the threshold. Simone believes he presses less because the signal is quieter now. Dr. Webb, when she mentioned this theory, said, "That wouldn't surprise me." Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. James built the rescue rehoming case for Kodiak over an entire Saturday morning. He spent 2 hours on it. He had the rescue organization's contact page open. He never sent the email. The next story involves a St. Bernard who planted himself outside a closed door for 9 consecutive days until the family understood what was on the other side of it. Kodiak lay at the foot of Theo's bed in the blue dark of early morning. The boy's breathing was steady and even. The dog's eyes were open.